Hey there, quick message before we begin. I'd just like to first thank you so much for choosing this video on how to start your career in tech. These are the strategies that I have personally used to land internships and job offers at top tech companies like Apple and Google. These are also the same strategies that I've used to help mentor friends, friends of friends, family, as well as other people who have contacted me directly to follow the same strategies and success that I have to land a dream job for themselves. Now, two things on this course. I first intended to make this course paid, but instead I've changed my mind and it's completely free and available for you to watch here on YouTube. Even though it is free monetarily, you still have to pay with your time to extract all the knowledge and wisdom within this course. So do yourself a favor, grab yourself a pen, grab yourself some notes, maybe open up a Google Doc on the side and take this seriously. You won't regret it. Second point I'd like to make is that this information is my personal opinion and experience working at these top tech companies. They do not reflect any of the values of the companies that I mentioned here, nor do I represent them in any way, shape, or form. Now, with that out of the way, let's get right into the course. Hey there, welcome to this video on how to start your career in tech and finally land high-paying internships and job offers as a computer science student or new grad. My name is Ricky, and I'm so excited to have you here today, joining me for the next couple of minutes as I walk you through all the steps that I went through to do exactly this: land a high-paying internship throughout my years in college to ultimately go to a new grad position at my dream company as a software engineer at Google. Many people have come to me for help and advice related to this exact topic, and I figured what better way than to put together all this information in an easy to digest course for you to take all the actionable insights away and none of the fluff. If you've never heard of me before, my name is Ricky and I've been helping computer science students get hired back since I was in college. I enrolled at NJIT, which is a small tech school here in New Jersey, back in 2018 as a completely clueless freshman. I was enrolled in computer science, and at the time I was working part-time at Starbucks while I was at college. And I realized quickly that coffee was not going to bridge me into a career in tech. So I decided to buff up my resume instead, begin academic research, land a role at a part-time job at Apple, working in their retail stores. And using this, I was able to bridge the gap to become an intern at FANG. First at Apple, and then later at Google. Ultimately, when I finally graduated NJIT, I then became a software engineer, and now I'm working as an iOS developer there on several apps within Google's ecosystem. Students at my school have picked up on my success and hundreds have asked me for help. I've done countless resume reviews, countless mock interviews, all the preparation that you can imagine to try to get someone into this role. They realize the success that I've had and they want to achieve the exact same thing. So instead of gatekeeping this information, I just want to publish this all out there for you to enjoy. A few notes on this course. This course is intended to be affordable. It's no secret that software engineers are well paid. We can earn $100,000 starting right out of college. So I comfortably could charge $1,000 for this sort of information, and you could get yourself a 100x return on your investment. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make it actually way more affordable so you get a higher return on your investment. This course is short because my time is valuable and so is yours. This course has zero fluff, only the actionable insights and takeaways in an easy to follow guide. I don't want to give you any of the unnecessary mumbo jumbo that exists out there, just the core parts that will actually get you hired. Many students and new grads face the same challenges, and I've seen this so many times in my experience, just helping students, helping bootcamp grads, helping friends of friends, helping family. Tons of people come to me, and I see the same patterns. People send hundreds of job applications, and you face a vast sea of talented competition out there, and you have trouble making your resume stand out. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to get to an interview, you lack the clear guidance for passing these technical interviews, and you feel stuck dreaming about your dream job instead of living it. If you felt any of these points, then this video course is meant for you. Now look, tons of people have created these roadmaps on how to crack the coding interview, putting a large emphasis on data structures, leak code style questions, and algorithmic interview prep. And while I think that that is a very important key part of passing these interviews. I think not a lot of people, well, I think a lot of people do that job better than I can. And so I'd rather like to focus on these last two steps in this job ladder. I want to talk about how do you actually communicate during these interview processes? How do you actually show yourself, demonstrate your worth, and make yourself look like the valuable candidate that you are? How do you get feedback and improve on your resume packet, on your applications, on your interview personality, and your job candidacy? I want to teach you how to actually interview in the moment to get those real jobs. How to actually talk to your interviewer more of as a collaborator rather than somebody who's assessing you. There's tons of mindset shifts here that have helped me finally crack through the door of these coding interviews. And I'm ultimately able to celebrate the offers of not only myself, but of other students who have joined me on my journey along the way. The problem is that too many students overestimate the value of interview prep in the classic sense of algorithms and data structures, and they underestimate the value of behavioral skills. It's a sad reality that a lot of tech people and a lot of our fellow engineers are quite technically brilliant and sound, but not so much behaviorally or socially fluent. Grinding lead code questions won't necessarily guarantee you an offer. They make it more likely, yes, but that's just one piece of being a good candidate, the ideal candidate, that great teammate who I can happily collaborate with, grab lunch with, grab a coffee, just hang out and write some code together with. And in this course, I cover the other factors of starting your career as a software engineer, that social half, if you will. I want to give a quick overview of what we will cover in this course. The first part, we'll talk about how do you actually create projects and showcase your talent and creating this portfolio that looks impressive to the recruiters, the hiring managers, and the people who are actually employing software engineers in the industry today. The second part, we'll talk about getting that attention of these recruiters, talking more about how do we network with these people? How do we stand out in a crowd? We'll talk about value validation projects, which is a fantastic way of getting your foot in the door, especially for startups, as well as following trends in the industry and following tons and tons of popular sort of tech, if you will. Next thing is talking about acing any technical interview. If you finally are able to get to the door at this step, let's talk about getting through that door at the next step. Then part 4 is overcoming rejection and the mentality of these interviews and these applications. The reality is that a lot of these applications will say no, you will be rejected more often than you are accepted. But that is the reality of it, and you can't let this turn you down or bum you out. So we'll talk about the mentality of how do you overcome rejection and keep on grinding through to get that offer. Lastly, we'll talk about part 5, celebrating your offer. This is when you get the good news that, hey, you have finally been accepted into your internship role or into your software engineering role, your new grad role. How do you actually celebrate your offer and negotiate the best rates for yourself? You see, it's great that you have received an offer. Maybe it's for 80K, 90K, but how can we bump you up to 100, maybe 120K? Let's target the high paying companies or the high paying stock packages and equity packages to then get you the best offer possible. I mean, if you made it this far, I consider you a highly valuable candidate. So let's get you paid like one. This course is only targeted to be 55 minutes long, so I highly recommend you schedule 2 30-minute blocks on your calendar right now to complete this. Because just buying or watching this video course doesn't make you better. I really want you to take the value out of this. Take the time. If you've sat this far, grab out a pen, grab out a notebook. Definitely take the time to listen to what I have to say here, because tons of people have already gone through these same steps and have seen real success out of this. Let's go into the next part, the intended outcomes. I want you to get recognized as top tech talent using high leverage job application tactics, build confidence for when you step inside the interview room, and arming you with the tools necessary to land your dream job. All it takes here is persistence, patience, and a willingness to work hard. Let's dive into the first part here on creating projects and showcasing your talents in the best light possible. Again, schedule those 2 30-minute blocks, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to part 1 on creating projects and showcasing your talent. Again, I am so excited to have you here. I'm really glad that we get to dive into this topic on making sure that you stand out in the best light possible. I think it's a bit of irony here that I have a giant light staring me down here so that I do appear in the best lighting possible. If I turned this off, I would look very dim and very dull, and you probably wouldn't be paying attention to anything that I had to say. Let's take a page out of my own book here in creating projects to showcase your talent. There's a problem with traditional portfolio projects. You don't stand out. Everybody is going for the same to-do list application, the same Airbnb, Apple.com clone, and it looks very, very commoditized. I believe that's the word. Everybody looks the same. Instead, projects must grab attention. When you follow the flock of those to-do apps, you just end up looking like a commodity. So you need a way to contrast the crowd. So I want to talk about two options in this section here: value validation projects and trendy projects. So I'll talk first about the value validation projects. How do you make an employer practically beg for your work? Now, a quick disclaimer before we head into this. This is a big claim. Now, I believe that this strategy would work best with smaller sized startup companies, whereas the next approach might work for your middle or large sized tech companies. So with that in mind, let's talk about what a value validation project is. This is a deliverable that benefits an influential contact at the company that you want to work for. In other words, this is a project that is proof that you can provide value to the company. This is saying that I am worth your time. You should hire me because I can bring you profit. I can save you time. I bring you value, maybe new customers, new markets, new features to a product that attract more users. It's a surefire way to contrast the crowd because almost nobody goes down this route. And because a lot of people target the higher, bigger corporations, I think that this isn't really the strategy for those kinds of companies. But if the company is maybe less than 100 people, then this probably will make you stand out. In this case, you know your stuff and you bring your results. So who wouldn't want you on their team? Now, less of the abstract, let's talk about a concrete example. Let's talk about Nina. This is a girl who wanted to work at Airbnb. You can see here she's dripped out in the Airbnb shirt and hoodie, and she's got a beautiful smile on her face. She wants to work for Airbnb. Nina loved exploring the world, and she aligned closely with the core mission of Airbnb. She wanted to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. So she applied online, just like all of us do when we want a job at a specific company, at our dream company. We hop on LinkedIn, we hop on Google Jobs, we hop on Glassdoor. Maybe we know a friend of a friend who works there. We try to slip in a referral, and then you wait. And then you wait and you wait. And finally, for Nina, an entire year passed, and she just knew that she had to try something different. She didn't let go of this dream, of this desire to work at Airbnb. So she tried something quite different. She took a different approach, and she realized that the Middle East was particularly an underserved market for Airbnb. Few B&Bs were listed there, but the number of people traveling there was increasing. So a light bulb went off in her head. She publicly stated how she could help Airbnb improve. On the right-hand side here, you can see Nina's profile, that she's in San Francisco, California, and that she wants to work at Airbnb. And thousands of other very talented people do as well. So, to show the kind of value I'd bring to the team, I've decided to be proactive and have analyzed the global tourism market to give you my 2 cents on where Airbnb should focus next. And at the time that she created this resume, this looked pretty similar to the style of Airbnb's website. You can see that there is a quick report on the different markets that she could capitalize on if she worked at Airbnb, as well as some Middle East cities: Dubai, Lebanon, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar. These are all cities that we're seeing an increase in travelers, especially Abu Dhabi. So she listed a case study for Nina for Airbnb.com. She mentioned the founders of Airbnb on Twitter, now known as X, and she presented her findings on this site. This showed drive, this showed creativity, this showed tenacity, a willingness to not only think outside the box, but to create outside the box and deliver outside the box results. And since this was so unique, this landed the attention of media and landed her an interview with Airbnb's founders, and it even earned her a job offer. So this website that probably didn't take her more than maybe a weekend or so of research, maybe a week, maybe two, ended up with her earning an offer. There is an asterisk though. She didn't land the role at Airbnb, but she did have dozens of companies in her inbox as a result of this viral resume. And all these companies were practically begging her to work for them. They thought that this was such an ingenious approach of showing her value, demonstrating her value in this value validation project. It validates to the employer that, hey, I actually can create value for your company, whether that's in terms of research and marketing or in some other domain. Maybe you create a new feature for an app and you solve this core problem of some UX animation that's janky on your company's app. I don't know. Just an example off the top of my head. This proves value. I'd like to move on to the next project here. I call these trendy projects. This is all about building something that is instantly, I'm talking instantly understood by your target audience. So I want to grab an example straight from my resume, but I want to rewind really quickly here. Rewind back to the year 2020. We all know what happened during that remarkable year and how everybody was forced to be inside. And so what I did was, as an undergraduate student, is I found a professor who was focusing on something related to the current events in the time. So what I did here was I found a research opportunity within the computer science department. And I was able to work on this project that measured public emotion related to the COVID-19 outbreak using public data gathered from Twitter. This is pretty straightforward. If you knew anything about what the state of the world was back in 2020, you'll quickly realize, oh, this is something that I easily understand using a platform that is super popular, known worldwide, and related to a pandemic that was also happening worldwide. I talk in a couple more bullet points here on what exactly I did, which was develop data mining tools and implementing natural language processing pipelines, and the results that I brought, which was 2 million plus gathered tweets used for machine learning models that studied public emotion. So this is a clear example as to what I did. There is visuals going on in your head as I say all of these words. You're thinking of the platform Twitter, you're thinking of the timeline, you're thinking of opinions, you're thinking of people voicing their frustration for social distancing and whatnot. So this is bringing light to my project. I'm not talking highly technical here. There is some jargon, but this is immediately understood. I open with the one line to describe the setting that we're in. I provide more detail in these 2 bullet points. And finally, I close with the result that I brought. There are some other trends that you could have followed over the course of the year. So back in 2020, there was the COVID-19 pandemic. 2021, remote work and home exercise was some popular trend. 2022, the rise of cryptocurrencies and NFTs, social media boom and hybrid work. And now in 2024, there's a huge emphasis on generative AI and automation with the powers of generative AI. You can pick pretty much any trend or any popular social media platform or tech platform and create some sort of analysis on this or some sort of project or some, very thin slice, very niche prototype for that market, for that project. And that could be worth tons on your resume. A project surrounding any of these trends is more likely to grab attention than the commoditized to-do list app. That's all I have for this section here on these trendy projects. If you have an idea, please leave a comment for a trendy project that you might create over the coming weeks and months to get yourself noticed. Depending on when you watch this video, it may be something completely different than generative AI. It might be something that I could have never foreseen. So please let me know what it is that you'll work on today. Now, we'll talk about how do you actually get recruiters to notice you. Ricky in the top right. All right, sick. Welcome back. It's good to see you here. I'm really glad that you've stuck along and have believed me so far in this journey. Again, I hope that you have a pen and a paper or maybe a Google Doc or something alongside you to take notes, because what we're going to be talking about here is going to be extremely valuable. And that's all about getting recruiters to notice you. So there is a psychology that I want you to understand when it comes to hiring. What do the recruiters see behind the scenes when they have a flood of applicants? They have hundreds of resumes to sift through, tons of qualified applicants, tons of unqualified applicants as well. How do we actually go through hiring someone. What goes on in the recruiter's mind? So I want to give you a quick example of LinkedIn.com. What does it look like here when somebody posts for a job listing? So here I'm looking for front-end web developer positions. And you can see that there's a couple of companies here, but more importantly, this already has over 100 applicants. So what is the recruiter going to have to do? They're going to have to go and sift through this large pile of all these applicants that have just one-click LinkedIn easy apply and may or may not be qualified for the role. And you can see that this is true for Hims and Hers, as well as Figma. These all have over 100 applicants on the job listing. And a little known secret about LinkedIn is that you really want to beef up your profile because this can definitely increase your rankings for specific kinds of roles. Let's say you talk a lot about web development or your past experiences heavily inside of web development, and you go through each of your experiences on LinkedIn and include web development skills such as React or Redux or TypeScript or any of these technologies and frameworks. That will then improve your chances of showing up higher on this listing here, especially with LinkedIn Easy Apply. It's a quick way of standing out. Recruiters, though, once they finally see your application, they give your resume seconds. So here are the core principles that I want you to focus on. Format your resume for easy readability. Lead with your strongest credentials. Paint a vivid picture in the reader's mind using captivating imagery and descriptive words. And don't forget to consider that automated ATS that I just talked about. We'll talk more about this later in detail. But again, there is a system that goes on behind the scenes that basically scores your resume, to put it simply. So how can we optimize for these 4 points here? Let's talk all about showcasing yourself in the best light possible. The best resumes are skimmable. In this world of ever increasing, or rather ever decreasing attention spans, we have to realize that there has to be some sort of tricks to get a recruiter to stick around. And I believe one of them is formatting. Now, I'm not talking about putting fancy colors all over your resume or using some wonky designs to be like, whoa, what is this? You don't want to jar your recruiter. Instead, you want to format things to guide your eyes. Look at this. Did you fall for it in the order that the designer intended? This is a pretty common trick that you'll find in most of advertising or even in UX design, where we will guide the eyes using very subtle cues that you don't really realize until, I've been tricked. So you read this first because it's the highest contrast. It's black, bold text on white, and then smaller text, also in bold, but now on yellow, which is less contrasting. And it's also further down the page. And the natural reading order, at least in English, is left to right, top to bottom. Then this one is even less heavy. And then this one is just out of the way. It's commonly referred to as the eyebrow. So using this, we want to format our key points with big typefaces, provide landmarks to the reader to find underlined sentences or to dart towards numbers. You want to highlight accomplishments with 1 to 3 numbers per line to give the eye somewhere to go to. Use logos if they're instantly recognizable on a printed resume. On a digital resume, I would actually discourage this. And use contrast to de-emphasize the less important points, but the technicalities. Maybe you can use contrast to de-emphasize your start and end dates, for example, or the city that this job was in, if that's not really important to you right now. Use the big typefaces to highlight the role that you held, the position that you were at, or maybe the company was more prestigious and you wanted to highlight that instead. Next up, let's talk about leading with your strongest credentials. Talking about your resume, the first thing that you should lead with is your professional experience if you have any. Next in that ranking should be your personal projects if you have any. And if you don't have any, I guess your education would come next, but you really want to have these personal projects. We'll talk more about exactly what to do or what to build later on in the course. This section should cover the most important technical projects you've ever laid your hands on. And even if you're a freshman, you've had 2 semesters worth of classwork that you can pull from. Think of your homework assignments, think of your final projects, think of your group assignments. There's usually something there that you can include. And if I really were to take one little thing from every semester that I took, I would have, quite a few projects under my belt. And I wouldn't include everything. In fact, you should only include the best stuff. This is called filtering signal from the noise. The noise is all the less important or the useless projects that were just to get by, but really pick your best work. Think about some of the harder classes that you took. Maybe you didn't perform great in them as a letter grade, but your resume isn't your report card. Your resume is a signal of your experience. What I would encourage you to do is to kind of showcase yourself in the best light, use some real examples, and really highlight your best self. I don't think you should lie on your resume. In fact, you should never, ever lie on your resume. But everyone is hyping themselves up on this document. I would encourage you to use the biggest numbers or the biggest claims that you can possibly defend in an interview. Don't make something up because I figured that this would look impressive on the resume. But what you should do is really kind of hype yourself up as honestly as you can, because again, everybody else is. You want to paint a vivid picture in the reader's mind when it comes to your examples on your resume. Let's talk about this bullet point right here. When you are painting a vivid picture in the reader's mind, you don't want to do this. So here the bullet point states, create engineering plans for a cross-functional team of 10 plus people. Great. This is a bunch of corporate jargon that doesn't really have life to it. Instead, let's focus on another example that you can pull from here, where it's all about visuals. Proposed a new engineering plan to improve the European user base retention rate, which grew to be the company's biggest market. Now, what is the difference here besides being a little lengthier? These three key words. Okay, I want to talk about the emphasizing of action words. Always start your sentence with a verb, some sort of action. You're in the middle of a story. You proposed something to someone. This is indicating action. Notice how when Europe was mentioned, you instantly thought of a map in your head. You think of the European Union. When you talk about these specific locations, geographies, user bases, or demographics, you're going to think in your head, whoa, this is exactly what I'm trying to portray. Just like I did earlier with my Twitter example. You thought of the timeline probably. And lastly here, the red point is grew to be. Now this seems pretty insignificant until you realize that this implies some positive change over time. There's some story, there's some progression, there's a narrative arc behind this. It's no secret that humans relate to stories and we understand stories better. So this is actually a story inside of a bullet point. I want to go through another example here where we paint a vivid picture of someone a bit more senior, a leader of a customer happiness team who organized and directed the rollout of new cloud infrastructure, which resulted in stronger relationships across development, yada, yada. I didn't want to read it. It's just too long. Instead, let's divide this into 2 bullet points. So if you have something really long on your resume, let's divide it up here. First point, first idea. Led a customer happiness team and grew our paying subscribers from 1K to 30K in 9 months. This, again, emphasis here on grew, emphasis here on led, and the numbers here that talk about what the progression was. And that was all 1 point, 1 story. Next story, next point. Rolled out a new cloud infrastructure to improve team productivity and collaboration after successfully pitching to senior management. Excuse the typo. Going on to why the improvements were made. Be honest, did you even read till the end of that paragraph up top? I didn't. Each idea deserves its own bullet point, like I just described here. If you can fit a story into 1 line, 1 point, that's where the point should end. Tell people what the situation was, what the problem was, and how do you solve it. Lastly here, when it comes to resume writing, I want you to remember, very, very importantly, do not forget, always consider the application tracking system, also known as an ATS. Back when we talked about the LinkedIn Easy Apply, there is a scoring system that goes on behind the scenes of virtually every company database unless if the company is too small to afford an ATS system, pretty much everyone will use one. There are a couple key things that you want to always do when you're using an ATS system. First and foremost, using a PDF format for all your documents, using a simple machine parsable template. That means that there's no funky formats. That means that sentences are read left to right, top to bottom, big headings for section headings. We'll talk more about what not to do, but we'll talk here about what you should do. Using relevant keywords that match the job description, and potentially using an online tool like ResumeMash or Resume Worded for a AI review. I am not affiliated with either of these companies, although I wish I was, but these are tools that will use software to analyze your resume for any potential improvements that you can make. Here's a sad story of someone on the CS Career Questions subreddit, which I'm sure you are familiar with. This person was rejected a minute after application, which at least they were honest with him. Now, chances are that this person just failed using the ATS system to their advantage. So you want to avoid weird things on your resume, like unusual fonts, unusual colors, and unusual formats. Use some template that exists online that is well established and just it works. Don't try to reinvent the wheel here. Pretty much all documents look the same. Don't try to keyword stuff by putting white text on a white background so that it blends in. That doesn't really work. Most companies will probably reject you for this. Don't use non-standard acronyms. Use stuff that is found in the industry. Maybe something like API is pretty common, so you could get away with that. But I would also use application programming interface to spell out the entire word. Don't submit your resume as a JPEG or some sort of unreadable file format. The computer will really best understand PDFs. Next up, I want to talk about the exact resume that I wrote that landed me an internship at Google. This is going to be a key part here. So again, I hope you have your pen ready. This is it in all of its ugly glory. Back in 2021, this was the resume that I used to get into Google. Pause, do what you have to do, take it all in. There is so much here that went right and so much here that went wrong. There's a couple changes that I would make. We'll talk about them in the coming minutes. First off, I want to talk about what I did right. And now this is an updated version of one of the sections of my resume relating to technical experience. You'll see here at the top, I wanted to emphasize New Jersey Institute of Technology. It's the first thing that you see. It's in big, bold letters. Newark, New Jersey. That's the next thing that you see. And then undergraduate research assistant in the computer science department between these years. Again, I'm following this format that I illustrated earlier with you will read this first. Left to right, top to bottom. Big bold, smaller bold, lighter color, even lighter color, lighter weight. Next up here, I have a one sentence high level description of my project. What did I do? This lays the stage in the reader's mind as to what I worked on. I measured public emotion related to the COVID-19 outbreak using public data gathered from Twitter. Next up, I'm talking about these things that I built. I'm using this framework right here. Action, thing I built, result it brought using technology X. So I implemented natural language processing pipelines to ingest tweets and store sentiment analysis results using Python. It's quite a simple format and structure to use. Some companies use some acronyms like the XYZ format, but this is just the most English readable result that I can provide to you. Lastly, this is something that I do that I have found success in, and it's kind of like the cherry on top, the bow wrapping, where I just tell you exactly what the project resulted in. In my case, it resulted in 2 million plus gathered tweets. And I use this same format as before. I talk about the number, the metric improvement using technology X. Next up is the technical skills section. On the left-hand side, I have categories, and on the right-hand side, I have the values. Some of you programming aficionados will know this as a hash map. It is a key value pair. Key values over here on the right-hand side. It's organized for a human to read. However, I don't think that this would actually be great for the ATS. It's keyword optimized. Yes, you can stuff tons of keywords in here in a valid format that wouldn't be seen as cheating. But I would probably replace this table that's underlying here with sentences, because tables can commonly confuse an ATS system. Instead, I would just probably write this out as one sentence. Next up, the education section. I'm following the same format as earlier. I put the university, the city, and my GPA. This is my graduating GPA. Previously, it was 4.0 when I applied. I now have the degrees that I was after, which was a Bachelor of Science and CS in Math. And I noted that I did a dual major here in parentheses just to show you that these are 2 degrees, or 2 majors rather. Anticipated graduation date, month, year, and if you are going for a master's, do the same thing. Now, this is a format that I don't see too commonly displayed, but if you are weighing and banking on your education section, put some of your coursework in here. You can arguably do this also in your skills, but I think that in education, this makes more sense. You can put your CS coursework, maybe your business coursework, maybe your finance and economics coursework if you're into those domains as well. For me, I put CS, and I believe I also put math in my updated resume. This is excellent for keyword matching again, and I would tell you to use the simplest description of the subject. Don't use course codes like MA110 for calculus. Just say calculus. I would omit the introduction to data science. If your university uses that naming scheme, just ignore it. Pretty much every college course is an introduction to, and your resume has limited real estate, so use it wisely. That's it for this section. That's all I know about writing resumes effectively using my exact resume template system. This is what I've used, and this is what I continue to use. Next up here, I want to talk about the 3-part system to acing any technical interview. We'll talk about studying, we'll talk about preparing, we'll talk about your mindset. Get ready, buckle up. This is going to be a great section. See you on the other side. All right, welcome back. I'm so glad that you decided to stick through it with me on this journey. We are now at part 3. And before we begin in part 3, just do me a favor and take a quick breath with me. We've covered a lot of ground so far, and I just wanted to take a second to breathe, take a deep breath, and now center back in on what's in front of us. The 3-part system to acing any technical interview. Now, at this point, you have the knowledge to get to the door. Next, you'll have the tools to get you through the door. It's a hat tip to Big Box Sui. This is a great lens to view the interview process through. You've done all the resume writing, and we'll talk more about the preparation to get you through the door of the interview to finally get your offer. So the quick outline here for these 3 parts that I want you to focus on is the structure. Typically, these interviews will be started by an online assessment, then a phone screen, then an on-site, or now usually it's just through a video call, but sometimes you are requested to come on-site. Next, in the second section, we'll talk about the behavioral skills, which I believe are the most overlooked component of these technical interviews. And then lastly, the technical skills. And I want to talk about the 18 data structures and algorithm concepts that you must know. And rather than focusing on hundreds, if not thousands of problems, we'll just focus on 18. That's a very manageable number. 18 concepts that you must know. Let's start here on the formatting. I have completely forgot to add a subheading here with extra punch. We're just going to roll with it. Typically, a technical interview consists of 3 parts. The initial screening, usually this happens maybe with an engineer or maybe with a recruiter over the phone, and you discuss the specific role. Next up, you'll be invited to perform a coding challenge. This could be between 2 to 5 rounds of coding. Usually an online assessment first, which is this automated platform, sometimes done through HackerRank or some sort of internal flavor. And then if you pass this round, you'll move on to the on-site interview phase. And like I said, it's called an on-site, but I've seen more commonly these are done through a video call. At the on-site, you'll collaborate with your interviewer, and a very key word here on collaborate. You'll collaborate with them in a bare bones code editor. Very simple, almost like a Google Doc. Usually these are like CodePen or some basic environment that's usually monospace, but you can't really write code. Don't expect syntax highlighting or autocomplete. and no way to run your code for sure. You'll usually be presented with a medium difficulty question on algorithms. This can vary from easy questions, but to all the way to hard, but it's usually like medium to hard level questions. Very unlikely that you'll get an easy level question, unless if it's some non-technical company that's hiring for a software development role. I've seen even some finance companies will ask you an easy question, even though you're applying for a technical role, but the company isn't necessarily a tech company. It's very rare, very unlikely. So I would expect a medium difficulty question on these data structures and algorithms. Next up, there will usually be some behavioral portion. Sometimes this is included within your standard interview rounds. Sometimes it is excluded as a separate interview process. And typically you'll have behavioral questions that start with, tell me about a time when. And in my opinion, these are the most important part of the hiring process. A lot of emphasis is done here, and I feel like that is very important. And I also think that there isn't enough emphasis on the behavioral half of how do you actually present yourself as a dependable teammate in the few hours that you have to interview. How do you show yourself as a great collaborator? We'll talk about that soon. Component. Why is this so important? Because technical ability alone isn't enough. I'm making a big assumption here with you and your skills so far. If you're into this sort of question, if you're into this sort of topic on interview prep, if you're doing all the preparation required, I believe that you already have the skills to code and to pass a technical interview. What I see less and less often is students who have this social fluency that is required to collaborate effectively on a team. How do you be a good teammate? How do you actually want to be someone that you can rely on? These aren't skills that are necessarily taught in your degree program or in your boot camp or in your interview course or your lead code bundle of 30 questions that were asked at Amazon. That's usually not covered. We really want to figure out, can you communicate your ideas clearly? I think that is the biggest, most important facet of these interviews. You want to know if you can communicate these ideas clearly. It's important to know how to code and how to actually achieve an algorithm, but if you just know it by rote memory, then that's less important to us than can you actually think up of a solution and communicate this through your words and through your code clearly. There are other topics too, like how do you handle stress or manage conflicts in some sort of tense situation. And believe it or not, they want to know is if you're a good storyteller. Well, maybe not necessarily are they judging you on this metric, but if you can tell a good story about your past experiences, then that will inevitably help you become a better candidate. What about these tell me about a time when questions? You'll hear something like, tell me about a time when you faced a challenging bug or technical issue, or you had to work with a difficult team member, or you took the initiative to improve a process, or you had to learn a new technology quickly. These are all stories that you will then present to your interviewer. It's important that you realize that these are common questions that may be asked at a company interview. So you should take the time to write out a couple paragraphs on each of these different stories, because I've been asked at least one flavor of these at every interview that I've done. Something usually about difficult team member seems to always be the case. I feel like engineers commonly disagree about many things, which is very normal. So figuring out how to gently navigate this situation is imperative for most teams. Now, when it comes to telling a story, how do you actually do that? Not many people focus on this, but there is this diagram from Kurt Vonnegut. Then the image here is from PipDex, where we talk about the simplest shape of a story. You start here in the comfort zone. This is when things are okay. They're not bad. They're not great. But something will trigger you to fall into a crisis. This is a low point. This is the pit. Something will end up getting you out of this pit. There is a better moment, a solution to a problem, some sort of discovery that you make that will recover you and ultimately bring you to a better place. So this is the simplest shape of a story, and this is what you should follow when you're talking through your interview process. In a comfortable situation, your software is working great until suddenly your servers go down. You fall into a crisis. Everybody's panicking. You're losing revenue at your company, and you would like to figure out why this is happening. You quickly dive into the logs. You quickly dive into the live feed and seeing what could have caused this issue. And you find out that last night is when you released your latest version and you couldn't manage the high load from this new service that you have upgraded to. So what did you do? You quickly rolled back the service, you pushed the update forward, and then you alleviated all the stress. You recovered back your happy users, and you've ended up in a better place. Something as simple as that, where you follow this typical narrative arc, is good enough for most interviews. I just made this up on the spot, so take the time to come up with something on your own. You can use the STAR method. This is a pretty popular method when it comes to how do you actually structure that story. You talk about the situation, which is the backstory, where you laid the ground, where I was talking about we were just releasing some process, some new feature. The task, this is the problem that arose, and next comes the action, what you did to solve it. Ultimately, the result is the positive outcome to this story. And that's what you really want to, this is exactly how you want to structure your stories. Using that same curve, you can use this acronym instead. This same curve follows different logic, but maybe this fits better in your head with this acronym. Go back to those previous questions and write a true story. Emphasis on true here for each of those points. And then tell a friend that, hey, I'm preparing for this interview upcoming for this new job that I'm looking for. Do you think you have time to listen to a story as I prepare for my interviews? They say yes or no. Most of them will be fine to listen to a story, and hell, they might even give you feedback and say like, oh, I didn't really think that this was right. That is if they are in the same role or same area as you are. Lastly, I want to talk about 18 concepts to master instead of 1,000+ lead code problems. Too many people fall into the trap of lead code, in my opinion. It's important, but how do we maximize results? You could spend your time doing this, lead coding every day, spending every day pushing in tons of submissions, doing hundreds of easy, mediums, and hards. Or you could follow a better guide. And I'm going to introduce you to NeetCode's beautiful roadmap here. Starting from the top on the simplest of topics, moving into more complex, but topics that build upon the previous lessons. Here at the top, you have these easy questions, what I would consider easy questions at least. Arrays and hashing, two-pointers, linked list, sliding window problems. And then I would consider the next layer your medium style questions, your trees, your backtracking algorithms. These are kind of medium-ish on the ladder here. And then ultimately the hard questions, talking about heaps and priority queues, graphs, dynamic programming in 1 dimension, dynamic programming in 2 dimensions. These are the harder questions that are more commonly asked at these top tech companies. Some sort of variant of these questions or these topics. If you really want the highest ROI, I think that you should follow these topics right here in the center. The 10% will probably be called here. This is usually where 10% of total interview efforts lie in. The other 80% are usually somewhere here. And then the last 10% are probably like on this extreme down here. I wouldn't call it super extreme, but it's just towards the bottom where it's less likely, right? I would really focus on these topics right here. So instead of completing this array and hashing lesson first and exhausting it to 100% completion, just do a few in each of these and then spend a lot more time here. That's what I would like to focus on. There is a great guide from NeetCode on his website where you can actually just click through these these problems and go through the questions through his platform. I don't want to spend any time going through these specific problems or solutions Rather, I trust you that you can go through the motions of practicing these leak code problems because you already know how to code. Spend about 30, 45 minutes on a problem. Treat it like going to the gym, where you know that if you just show up, you will get the benefit. Even if you don't win that day or you pass on your own that day, just show up and go through one problem each day. As simple as that. Don't spend hours and hours and hours going through all of this. I feel like this is probably the highest ROI place that you can spend your time in. The other concepts are pretty important too, to at least get you to this level. If you really want to have a complete 100% certainty that you are prepared, I don't think it's worth your time. I think it's fine to just go here. Then practice all these problems. But I would suggest emphasizing and spending more time here. Next, let's talk about overcoming rejection and how to handle imposter syndrome. I'll see you on the other side. You're back. Amazing. Now, part 4, we will talk all about the mindset behind overcoming rejection and navigating imposter syndrome. In our industry, imposter syndrome is all too common. And if for some reason you haven't heard of imposter syndrome or felt this sensation before, all it is this feeling of inadequacy and this constant fear that you will finally be found out, that you are incompetent, that you aren't enough, and that you should be fired from your job or your project. It's all too common in our industry, and I don't believe that that should be the case. And so we'll talk about ways to navigate imposter syndrome and other people's stories, even celebrities that you may have heard of, and how they've navigated imposter syndrome. But first, let's talk about rejection. Rejection is perfectly normal if you have the right mindset. And I want to talk about this example here. Let's illustrate it with an example. Here, this person got rejected, and he said, man, rejection really sucks. I thought I would be lucky. In this market, getting an internship seems like near to impossible. After 500 plus applications, I was able to land an interview call, had behavioral OA, and then technical interview. And they told me they will finish this off with the final HR round, but damn, I got an email saying that they are not moving further with me. Feeling too much down, just ranting it out. Smiley face. I think that ranting this out is perfectly healthy, perfectly normal, and you should do something like this. Write it down, journal it out, tell your mom, tell your friend, tell your brother, whoever it is, just get it out. This is a part of the process and it's pretty normal, but you can't let this stop you. Lots of competition means lots of rejection. If there's 100 plus applicants applying for one opening, that means it's very common for the majority to be rejected. But realize that each rejection is one step closer to acceptance. Tomorrow, this rejection will be a part of the past. Keep your head high and move on forward. Rejection is not something that you should lull on or dwell on. It's going to be okay. Imposter syndrome. This is when rejection will dig deep into you and you'll feel like, I'm a failure, nobody wants me. And then finally, when you break on through, you have been now accepted, you've been wanted. But there's this nagging sense in the back of your head that's telling you, whoa, why do they accept me? Shouldn't I be rejected just like everybody else did to me? Here we'll talk about how to feel like a competent software engineer. So tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You have these thoughts that I'm not cut out for this engineering job, or the work I'm doing is way above my head. I'm a complete fraud and I don't belong here. This, my friend, is the nagging voice of imposter syndrome. It doesn't have to be this way. You might think that everyone else is ahead of you or is born with innate talent that makes them better than everybody else, as if being a top-tier programmer is encoded in our genes. This is obviously far from the truth. You aren't born a great programmer, you become one through practice. Even today's best programmers started with hello world. Imposter syndrome is just self-doubt. That's it. You blame luck as the reason for your fortune, your success, and you carry a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud. But if you've put in serious work to become a good programmer to get to where you are today, to be in school, to apply for these internships, to go through the motions of what a programmer does, why would you doubt? So I'm going to explain 5 mental reframes to eliminate it from your head. 1. Understand the Dunning-Kruger Effect. There is a chance here that you have felt this increase in your knowledge and your confidence only on the small end of this x-axis. You don't actually have much knowledge, but you do have tons of confidence. And this is what we call the peak of Mount Stupid. Now, when you are first starting out and you're finally getting some momentum, you feel great, you feel fantastic. But then there's someone who usually comes along and makes you feel inadequate, makes you feel inferior, or they just show that you actually don't know as much as you think you do, which is incredibly common. So you start dropping down and you are humbled. You are in this cultured situation here where your knowledge is now not down here, but it's up here. However, your confidence has dropped from this peak of Mount Stupid to this valley of despair. And then as time goes on, you finally figure out more and more. You gain your confidence. You keep on increasing further and further. And ultimately, you reach expert status if you stick to it long enough. Funny enough, though, there is this difference between the peak of confidence that you had when you were a complete total beginner to now where your confidence lies as an expert in your field. This is so strange, but it is a real phenomenon that is observed throughout all disciplines of life, known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. For whatever reason that doesn't work, let's talk about another solution here. Character reinvention. Let's look at Sasha Fierce here, or commonly known as Beyonce. Beyonce was on Oprah, and Oprah's asking her, when does Sasha Fierce show up? And so Beyonce says, when I hear the crowd, when I'm nervous, when I have to perform, then Sasha Fierce appears in my posture and the way I speak. So Beyonce has created this character in her mind, Sasha Fierce, that is this performer, that is this extravagant singer, that only appears when she is nervous inside, when she has millions of screaming fans shouting her name. She has to let go of these insecurities and just turn it on at the flip of a switch. So what she did was she identified the situation where she'd like to show up as the best version of herself. For you, this will be when you clock into work, when you log on to stand-up, when you show up to class, when you go to your mock interviews, when you go to your real interviews. You have to be your best self. Then you have to visualize your ideal self and picture the version that you aspire to be. What traits does this ideal self have? How do they appear? How do they walk? What is their posture? What is their mentality and their energy level? Figure that out first. And then finally, you want to get into character. Get yourself some practice by turning on this character in those mock interviews. Show up as your best self in this moment and realize that, hell, even Beyonce had to go through these motions. Next up, if that isn't enough for you, I want you to list out your biggest wins over the last 2 years. We go through our lives so zoomed in, focused on the day-to-day, our habits, our rituals, our routines, that we believe that everybody else sees the world the same way as we do. And this constantly will be a point of tension for people who don't see the world the same way as we do, because we usually come from different upbringings. So why don't we zoom out a little bit? Let's rewind and realize that nobody has lived the same life as you. You have one unique quality that nobody else has. So try this exercise. Take an inventory over the last 24 months of your life. For me, these are some things that I would put on my list. Races I've ran, jobs I've started, projects I've built, and you could have mountains that you've hiked, business deals you've made, academic papers you've authored, or workshops or courses that you've completed. And these are all pretty career-focused bullet points here, but these could be as small or as personal as you'd like to get here. Realize that you've actually come quite a far way that most other people, maybe even your closest family or friends, haven't done the same. I am one of the most avid runners in my friend groups and in my family groups. Not many other friends of mine run, or at least run in races. So for me, this is a key distinction that makes me, me. Lastly, this is second to last. I want to let go of perfectionism. If you think you aren't good at something, chances are you haven't tried enough. Realize if you've only tried to cook steak once and it came out meh, then you probably just need to practice and get better at something. You need to get better at seasoning the steak or checking the temperature or searing at a high enough temperature or whatever the case may be. Ben Meir from System Sunday has coined this 70-20-10 rule of work, where 70% of your work will be mediocre, 20% will suck, but 10% of it will be awesome. You just see the best work of everyone else. You see everyone else's 10%, and algorithms on these social platforms will just push the best stuff to you directly. So you're only trained to see the best stuff. And you assume that this is the standard, but this is survivorship bias. You see the best stuff only. Now, here is the paradigm shift that you have to realize. If you are avoiding failure, you're avoiding success. You don't want to chase success. You want to chase failure because that will teach you more. Realize that nothing will be perfect. You really want to understand that 70% of the work will be mediocre. 20% will suck bad. But about 10% of it will actually be awesome. Put in the reps. You'll get better with time. 5. Embrace challenges as an opportunity to grow. There are two opposing schools of thoughts on performance. There is the fixed mindset, where you believe you are born with a specific amount of performance, talent, if you will, and it's innate. You cannot change it. It is what it is. And however good you are at running per se is how you will be for the rest of your life. It's fixed. The other half is the growth mindset, where your performance is improvable. You start at X and then you end up improving to level X plus 1. You can get better at a certain task through practice and feedback. And sometimes we flow between both of these mindsets in certain domains of life. For me, I don't think I'm quite a good dancer. And even though I have a growth mindset for other aspects of my life, for example, programming, just feel like I don't have the rhythm to move quite fluidly. So I personally think that I'm quite a terrible dancer and it will be hard for me to get better. But I also haven't put myself through the classes nor the practice to improve. So of course I won't improve if I look at it through the growth mindset lens, because I haven't done any of the practice or received any of the feedback. So if I'm not practicing, then yes, it will stay fixed. It's these challenges when you go through the practice and the feedback that provide the opportunity to grow. Just like a muscle, when you are lifting and bicep curling to the point where it physically hurts, you are reaching muscle exhaustion. You are close to that. It's challenging. It hurts. You don't want to do it. But that's exactly what causes the muscle to grow. The same reasoning will apply for hours spent interviewing or lines of code written. Realize that the more that you practice, the better you will get. That's it for this section. I want to now move on to part 5, talking about 3 common negotiation questions to earn up to an extra $40,000 in your next packet, in your next job offer. I'll see you on the other side. This has been a very informative section so far. I hope you agree. Here's a great reminder to like, subscribe, comment, do everything that you need to do on this platform. Oh boy, we are here in the home stretch, part 5, all about celebrating your offer with intelligence. I want to talk about 3 common negotiation questions that you will hear and exactly how to answer them to earn up to an extra 10, 20, 30, maybe $40,000 in your total compensation, in your entire compensation package. Now, I'm going to base this talk on this video right here. This video taught me everything that I needed to know and exactly what I will talk about in this section, all about how should you negotiate your tech salary. This is from levels.fyi, and they talk about the common questions, and they back this up using data points. They back this up using a simulation and tons of real examples here. Congratulations, you finally have this offer. What are your salary expectations? This is probably the most common question that you will hear from a recruiter once you are at the offer stage. What is your worth? Not many people put too much thought into this. Funny enough, this one YouTube comment says that the amount of engineers who I hear have drastically different salaries, but both have the same role at the same company is crazy. It's not uncommon for someone to make a lot more money in a high cost of living situation or city versus someone in a low cost of living situation. So what about the people in the same city? Let's say New York, for example. They might be the same level, but one might earn an extra $10,000 or $20,000 more. An extra $20,000 is it's a nice car, nice used car probably. So you need to be prepared for this specific question as early as the first phone call with a recruiter. You should be prepared with a high salary anchor from levels.fyi for your role, level, and location. And if for whatever reason you have never seen levels.fyi before, this is what it is, and without the dark mode filter. This will teach you everything that you need to know about most top tech companies and how much they are paying you. For example, on Microsoft, you can see by level, which for some reason they start at 59. This is the average or the levels.fyi estimate. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger. Let's go to Google, for example. A L3 software engineer is making roughly about there. And as myself, an L3 software engineer at Google in a high cost of labor city, this is about right. I think I make maybe a little bit more than this, but this is about right. Amazon, you can even see as the higher levels go. Now, it's very difficult to get to these levels, and this is not the purpose of this video course. The video course is to break you into these entry-level roles right here, such as analyst, for example, or such as SDE 59, for example, or at Facebook, I think, or Apple maybe does their juniors a little, they have more sensible naming schemes. I'm not sure why, but the top of the list here is the entry-level role. You want to be prepared with this high salary anchor from the data set that you see at levels.fyi for your role, for your level, and for your location. Ideally, another company's counteroffer should be handy already for leverage with negotiation. Chances are you will be interviewing with several different companies. If you can snag more than one offer, then you can put them against each other. If you have a company offer at, let's say, $120,000 and the other company is willing to only pay $100,000, but you would rather, whoa, what is going on with Apple? I think just celebration just went on. If they have $100,000, but you would rather work at this company because of culture or fit or product than this one, just tell them, hey, I have a $120,000 offer over here. Can we at least match? Because I would like to work here better. And that $20,000 difference usually can be matched. Now, there will be the opportunity for you to talk with your recruiter where they say, what will be your salary expectations? And you should be prepared to deflect this question right back to your recruiter. Let them know, hey, I haven't really thought about the expectations here. Let them give you a salary band first. Chances are that they have this number handy and they will play hard to get here. You want to keep on deflecting this by saying, hey, I actually haven't given it too much thought, or hey, I'm not really sure with what the market situation is, or hey, I want to know more about what you're offering for this role. Money is a very touchy subject, at least here in the United States and for most of the world when it comes to these sorts of questions. So be prepared to deflect and be ready to let them show their cards first. Don't reveal any previous compensations. Some laws in some states will cover you if you don't want to reveal previous compensations at previous companies, if you have that experience yet. Explain to them that you really haven't given much thought and ask them for a salary range. Do not budge. Always deflect the question back to the recruiter. They should be telling you what they are paying for this role. Nowadays, it seems very popular that on job listings, they will actually show you kind of the salary range. which is a step in the right direction, in my opinion, but it's not standard practice quite yet. Question 2. You have now received this offer, but you only have 24 hours to accept it. Are you in? These are known as exploding offers, and congrats, you've finally moved to this stage, but you've received an exploding offer. Maybe you need to relocate or talk with your family first. These kinds of offers really don't give you enough time to think it through. And I think this is kind of a shitty situation to be in. It's a bit unethical in my opinion. So you should really push them for extra time. You want to foot the blame on someone else. Let them know that you have to talk it through with a family member or your mentor, that you need time to figure out what is the best situation. Ask to talk to a member of the team. Maybe they're trying to insist that you make this offer, trying to accept or reject this offer now, but say that you just need more information. Can you talk to a member on the team? This is something that I've done before where maybe just one interview isn't enough. Can you talk to a second person in a more casual setting as not an interviewer, but as a potential future teammate? Schedule a little bit more time to decide if this is truly the right fit. Step 3, or option 3, let them know that you have a competing offer potentially. Your options are open. You're kind of shopping around for another job and you need to make the best decision for yourself. If this is the case, then do it. Let them know. Use this as leverage. In the United States, you also have the NACE law. Companies must give graduating students a 2-week minimum to accept an offer. Now, this is law for graduating students. This is not the case for existing professionals, if I understand correctly, but I have had to use this in situations where I was an intern or I was a student and I am about to graduate. And this NACE law has really covered me to get an extension for deadlines on offers. Maybe it's not a 24-hour deadline, but you can at least push it up to 2 weeks if it's only a 1-week deadline, for example. You should always get an extension. So maybe you can always put a little bit more room to interview or get another offer from another company. That extension will save you. Question 3, last question. Does X figure make you happy? Now, how is total compensation calculated first off? There's usually the salary, which is what you are paid bi-weekly on your paycheck. Let's say you get a paycheck of, $5,000, right? Every 2 weeks, that's what you will see, and that is your salary. Often you will get a sign-on bonus in the tech space. This can range anywhere from $0 if you don't get a sign-on bonus, up to $25,000 I've seen on the high end for entry-level roles. Could be higher for more senior roles down the line. And the third leg is usually equity, which is typically vested over 4 years at 25% per year. And this might be one of the bigger numbers on the screen, but don't let it fool you because you really only see a quarter of it your first year if you're at this 25% per year cycle. So an example offer here, let's say that your salary is 130K, your bonus is 20K, and your equity will be 100K. You might be quick to sum this all up and see that you'll be making $250,000. The recruiter will add up all the largest number and say that your total comp is that $250,000. But according to vesting cycles, in year 1, 130K of your salary plus 20K of your bonus plus 25K, which is a quarter of your equity, really only sums up to 175. The recruiters will ask you, does this big figure, $250,000, make you happy? And this is the moment that you can earn extra cash. Now listen, recruiters expect you to negotiate. Hell, they probably had to negotiate for their interview to become a recruiter to even just pass the interview round. I'm making this up. I don't have any data to back this up, but hell, if I were in the position of hiring a recruiter to hire for my company, I would hope that they would negotiate themselves into a higher rate. Just show that they are experienced with the whole negotiation process. Because when I expect them to hire, they will then be expected to negotiate with oncoming candidates. Play around with your ask. You can get a larger sign-on bonus to sign right away if you want to just get the deadline done. You can get a higher salary because you have a competitive counter offer or more equity in the company to ensure loyalty while your stock vests. These are a couple good reasons for each of the 3 different legs of your total compensation package that you can leverage in a conversation when you're negotiating and demanding more money. Now, listen, asking for money isn't a bad thing. It's perfectly normal. We are all at work to get paid. It's just a simple fact of life. You should always, always, always negotiate for more. That's it. You have sat through this entire course on how to start your career in tech. I'm so glad that you've made it this far. Here, let's go full screen. I'm so glad that you've made it this far into the course. Now, listen, if you would like to work with me, I will definitely leave a link down in the description somewhere near this video, wherever you're watching this, so that you can talk to me one-on-one and we can get you started with your path to a job and career in tech. I'm so happy that you've made the decision. I'm glad that you took notes along the way. And listen, if there's any comments, if there's any feedback that you'd like to leave, drop that down there. Yeah, thank you. I will see you in the next one.